is the first one with Joe at the helm.
Thank you, Keith. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the right my occasion might be for you. So thank you for joining us. Keith, thank you for the nice introduction. We are very excited about pulling together this group again, and Lourdes has been sort of whispering in my ear about some trade secrets and things that I need to remember as we move forward. So I appreciate that. And Lourdes Sanchez Ridge will be working with me, along with a couple of other colleagues from the U.S. may be helping with planning. Jason Gottlieb, who's at Morrison and Cohen in New York City. He's chair of their white collar practice. And Tim Delaney, who's with Bose, McKinney, and Evans in Indianapolis. So those are, and Lourdes is distinguished by having been a former federal prosecutor. And Tim Delaney is a former state prosecutor. So some backgrounds that are useful to us. And then Jason Gottlieb is chair of the white collar practice at his law firm. So I am a partner shareholder at the Baker Donelson law firm. And we cover some of the southeastern states in the United States. And we've been a longtime member of Mackrell, maybe I think over 20 years, Keith, I believe right now. And so what we don't want to do is overpromise today, because we really need your help and lifting the boat, so to speak, making sure this is a successful venture. And it needs to be a real team effort. And that means everyone on the call today is welcome to speak up. And Keith, I may ask you to help sort of coordinate the queue, if you don't mind, because all of us being lawyers, we all want to speak at the same time, probably. And we don't have no shortage of egos, having been solicitors, barristers, lawyers. So we shared with you the statement of intent for the group, and please take a look at it. It's not sacrosanct or holy writ. We are free to modify it, change it, adjust it, adapt it, but we thought we'd capture some core ideas in it that would be useful to those of you around the world. And I think mostly today we're in Europe, Great Britain, and the US and Canada. We wanted to talk about goals and missions and things we might want to achieve. One of the greatest missions of Mackrell, in my opinion, has already been achieved already today by us being on the same call with one another. And so the opportunity to connect, share client information when we need help in your various countries is something that's really been central to the Mackrell mission. So I look forward to having further conversations with those of you on the call. We also have discussed, and I may turn it over to Lourdes in just a second, thoughts about joint programming. You know, do we want to try to be ambitious and do some seminar or presentation type activities on issues that might cut across the entire landscape of the world, looking at issues like global corruption, things fitting into the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act initiatives that we have here in the US, or the SFO in England. Tax issues certainly are cross-cutting around the world. Money laundering issues, the chasing of money, the rise of Bitcoin and electronic currency, how that impacts the conduct of our clients, a range of issues that might touch on. And then, of course, worldwide antitrust enforcement. We're no end in sight there. There is lots of coordination now in the world between different countries enforcing antitrust laws. So Lourdes, hopefully no one's fallen asleep during my remarks, but perhaps you could share a few thoughts with everyone.
Yes, well, this is a forum when I was handling this in the past, and it was brand new, actually. You know, we did actually the first international webinar that I'm aware of, definitely through Mackrell, and this was way before COVID, before Zoom, before any of this. And it was, I was telling Joe, I can't remember whether it was on the FCPA or on investigations, or I can't really remember I think it was in FCPA, but anyways, we had people from different parts of the world, a panel of 3 plus, and then we had the person who was coordinating. He was actually not a white collar criminal defense attorney. He was a member of Mackrell in the civil division, in the civil practice group. So we kind of integrated those two groups. We sent out the invitations all over the world, obviously, and we had quite a number of people attend this webinar, which was very, very fruitful, I thought. Anyway, so there were different things that we also did and we're thinking about doing. We can do white papers together. The reach of this group, because of the reach, because it's so broad, you can really, go out to a lot of people. So there's just a lot of things that we could do, and then there's also social stuff. But working together as a group, telling your clients that you have this international connection. I just sent out a LinkedIn about our sister affiliates or our sister firms in throughout the world. This was Keith. I attended a personal branding seminar that Keith put together, and I just put it on LinkedIn, just showing that our firm is part of this organization that is nationwide and reads, not nationwide, worldwide, and reach a lot of other people. So I think, this group could be very useful in not only talking about what our countries are doing and how we're enforcing our laws and what are the pitfalls, but also getting the message across to potential clients that we have this, we're really an international law firm, but with local prices and a local feel. So that's how I take this group as being.
Right. Thank you, Lourdes. And I will have some dialogue, hopefully more dialogue with each of you on the call now. And what I thought, Keith, we might do is maybe move from far away and then to close, or whichever direction you want to go.
You just want to test my geography, don't you, Joe? Yeah, let's do that. And actually, I don't think I churlishly, mentioned Tim when we were sort of going around the room at the beginning in Indiana, who's, he's sitting in shorts, but at least he's got his jacket on. Unlike me, I've got suit trousers on, but my t-shirt. Just before we go around the room, one thing to pick up on that Lourdes and Joe have touched on, with a couple of the other practice groups, we've done video recordings. One as a webinar, which we then recorded, and then sliced up various parts of it to push out on social media and for firms to use, to send to clients for their own use, because everything that is within Mackrell International is not proprietary to MI, it's yours. And we've also done transcripts, which we've expanded slightly. We have a legal copywriter that's been able to take the essence of the conversation and expand it a little bit. And that also helps in the creation of white papers, which means we're not starting from scratch. Again, content that is useful for websites, content that is useful for sending out to clients and for circulating around, not only within law firms, but for distributing more widely. So all of these things we're completely open to. I can't believe that, Lourdes, you did one however many years ago. That I'm surprised that Mackrell International was even able to support it. We must have had our people sort of pedaling very fast to keep the technology working. But as Joe and Lourdes said, this is about connection, understanding, sharing insight, and let's build on it from this start. I'm going to shut up because it's not my meeting. Let's start with, I'm guessing Switzerland is the furthest away, and Zaina, you come in ahead of Sandro in the, no, you don't, but we're going to do ladies first. So I'm just out of politeness. So Zina, you go first, and then Sandro, you can chip in, or you can just act as the wingman. So let's start with Switzerland.
So thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, so Sandra and I, we joined this group to get a network, to exchange with other people in the field of the white collar crime. I'm working mainly in criminal law and doing also CPD law a little bit and family law. So for me, it's a very good approach to do webinars, to share maybe connections with each other, or to share case possibilities if we have, and just to strengthen the network. Thank you.
And Sina, where are you located? What city in Switzerland?
In Zurich. So we are at
Okay.
Hire Partner Attorneys in Zurich. We're a full service law firm. And yes, we have one main branch, what is criminal law. There, we're situated in Zurich.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Sandro, anything to add, or did she steal all your thunder?
Of course, as usual, but I have I don't have much to add. Yeah, I see the purpose of this group pretty much the same as Sine. You know, to get to know each other, to get a network going, and to talk about strategies that we can use in these cases that are not that often had in our firm, at least now, because, you know, we're a bit a smaller firm, but we are always looking to broaden our horizon, and I think this is a great opportunity.
Sandro, are you also in Zurich?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we work at the same law firm, also at Hire Partner Attorneys.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Although presumably you guys haven't seen each other for a while, or you know, although the air in Switzerland is so clean that COVID can't.
Yeah, we have to go sometimes to the office, so we're today both at the office.
Yes.
Brilliant. That's good to know. Things getting back to normal.
Yes.
Thank you both. Let's.
Keith, to interrupt, if I can interrupt, excuse me, but I was thinking maybe part of this equation might be the shared. We have had one shared experience for, unfortunately, and that's been COVID worldwide. So maybe just integrating. I appreciated hearing about how COVID is impacting lawyers in Switzerland. So maybe as people go through, they might add that to their comments. Thank you.
Well, for us, not that much has actually changed, I think, because we all have individual offices, so we can still go to the office, and we do actually, and also the assistants are here to, you know, handle the mail and stuff. They can't do that from home very well. We're also a bit old-fashioned, and we have a lot of files on paper, and yeah, so actually the lawyers pretty much still come to the office, at least, as I would say, 50% of the time, and the rest they are working from home. But of course, you know, stores are closed and restaurants are closed. There's nothing to do except work and Netflix at home.
And we skip all the lunches and the coffee breaks at work, which I really miss.
True.
Thank you. Thank you.
So productivity. So Mackrell is very happy because productivity has increased. Okay.
Can I just add a comment? Pam, that picture is not what we want to see. We are trying to get people out of jail, not put them in jail.
Keep me out of jail. Get me out of jail.
Pam can always be counted on for bringing the humor. Let's go from east to west. So I'm guessing we're hitting Guernsey next, Kirti.
Hi there. Hopefully, I'm actually going to switch off my video because I've got a Hello World background, which is from a baby shower over the weekend. But just
that's
so
nice.
you can see me, well, just so you can see me and I can just say hello.
At least you're not a cat.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm very grateful for that. It's nothing quite as animated. So basically, I am at a firm called Babby, based in Guernsey. A South African admitted attorney joined the Babby firm in halfway through 2019. Basically, my background is I was part of the investigations team at Norton Rose Fulbright in Johannesburg. Still wanted to stay a little bit a part of that. So now I'm a litigation and regulatory associate at Babby. Really think this is a good sort of forum just to get into touch with people that do similar sort of work that I'm interested in. I suppose from my perspective, what I can add is in my time at the firm, I've been doing a lot of really responsive work in that sense. I mean, responses and submissions to the enforcement division of the Guernsey Financial Services Commission. Basically, they have been undertaking certain investigations into financial institutions, licensed fiduciaries, and directors in their personal capacity. And we've been instructed in my time at Babby, it's been 3 instructions from people in their personal capacity and 1 entity, 1 licensed fiduciary. So we're sort of on the responsive end to regulatory investigations. So I suppose from that perspective, I can add in, at the appropriate time, sort of general updates about how enforcement actions are proceeding in Guernsey. And from a COVID perspective, as Joe mentioned, we are coming out of our 2nd lockdown next week, Monday. It was a very strict lockdown. We went into at the end of January. Initially, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, but now, here we are towards the end of March. Okay, we are now down to 1 active case, and that's the reason we're coming out of lockdown. But we've predominantly been working from home since the end of January. We were quite lucky in that I would say from June till December last year, all internal restrictions were lifted. So things were really easygoing in some respect for the second half of last year, although we could not travel. So I haven't been off the island in just over a year. So that's all for me. Of course, if you've got any questions, do let me know.
Kirthi, this is Joe. Would you have some ideas about planning for the group, topics, things, anything in particular? Investigation sounds like something that's a strong suit of yours, but just any thoughts on what you might like to see us do?
Sure. I think sometimes it's quite interesting to see what the regulators are trying to aim for from that perspective, not necessarily guesswork, and of course there is a certain amount of speculation, but just trying to see what the focus is of regulators. And speaking from a Guernsey perspective, there does seem to be an indication of the regulator somewhat going for low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So not necessarily, obviously I don't want to downplay it, but it wouldn't necessarily be great money laundering risks and things like that. It's sort of the smaller companies and fiduciaries that they're going for at the moment. So I really think it's quite interesting to try and gauge potentially the targets of regulators going forward, so we could potentially explore that further.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirthi. Hannah, we're heading north to London.
Hello there, everybody. Yes, my background is 20 years criminal defense lawyer. I've never veered off of that in my career, and I have previously been a partner at several boutique firms in the city, but I have more recently branched out to work for myself in the main, but I have a consultancy with Mackrell's, all very new, but going very well so far, new in terms of my time with them. So I'm very much a late joiner to things today, but looking forward to building networks with you as best I can. I am a committee member of the Fraud Lawyers Association in London. Not much has been happening at the moment as a result of the lockdown here that's gone on and on and on. But things are starting to pick up very, very slowly. I would say by May or June, things will probably be moving a lot better than they are at the moment. In terms of the COVID impact on things here, I mean, the courts ground to a halt last year, but they have got better and better. We have these Nightingale courts, which have sort of taken over where the Nightingale hospitals were supposed to be. So the bigger, more unwieldy fraud trials are now able to take place again, and they are happening. But a lot of the work, even the court hearings, are being done from home, which is I find quite challenging. But even some jury trials have been conducted remotely, but not with huge success, as you can imagine. So it's a very sort of slow climb back into a proper working day for us all here, really. But hopefully we're moving in the right direction. So I look forward to getting to know you all a lot better as we move forward.
Hannah, you have some thoughts about topics for our group?
Well, nothing in addition to that which has already been mentioned. I think that what was just mentioned, I think by Chrissy, was interesting, the regulatory aspect of things and how things are being charged, what's being prosecuted and what isn't is quite an interesting topic to explore at the moment, because things have changed. And as I say, with things slowing down as much as they did last year, there was an enormous backlog anyway. So it's very interesting to explore perhaps what is now being targeted in terms of the prosecutions, I think, moving forward. And that's perhaps something we could look into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Because I'm, as a non-lawyer, and something that Joe and I communicated about briefly, you know, I'm curious if the pandemic has increased any particular areas of white collar crime. Has the fact that many people have been you know, forced to work from home had any effects, or is it very much that there's been a backlog? It's interesting to hear Kirsty talk about sort of the Guernsey Financial Services Commission going for the sort of smaller to medium-sized entities and the lower hanging fruit. And is that something that's happening worldwide, or is it a bit like sort of bankruptcy and insolvency lawyers, where there's been so much protection that everybody's waiting for the courts to open up and things to start moving again?
I think that's definitely the case here. That they're just these you know, the bigger cases, the bigger fraud work, the bigger investigations, that they just haven't been charging them because they know they haven't had the capacity or the courtrooms or the means to take that prosecution through. So that I would say that almost halted for a good 6 to 9 months last year, and is really only getting going towards the end of last year and this year now. You know, you're starting to see, and I mean a handful of the big prosecutions that are actually being made now. But prior to the pandemic, you know, you were looking at sometimes over 2 years, 3 years for an investigation to get to a charging point and get to a court. So there was already a real problem, and it's only been exacerbated.
Keith, to Hannah's comments, in the U.S., the U.S. Congress has just passed a $2 trillion package of relief, and sums of money, the likes of which you've never seen, are being flooded out to businesses. The money's supposed to be used for appropriate uses. Regrettably, in some cases, maybe these are potential clients of ours, the individuals receiving the money are buying, you know, Lamborghinis or vacation homes and this sort of thing. I don't know whether this is a worldwide phenomenon, but anyway, just something to think about. I would think enforcement, speaking of low-hanging fruit, maybe looking at that sort of thing to pursue in various countries. I'm not sure whether the same phenomenons happen in England, where you have money coming out to subsidize individuals. But anyway, that's something just to mention in tracking what Hannah was saying.
There's definitely been instances of furlough fraud. I think, you know, having conversations as I do with law firms and, you know, worldwide, and sort of following the worldwide press to keep an eye on trends, that's certainly something that you know, unfortunately it's human nature. Someone will always try and take advantage of a situation. So that's certainly seen in the UK, some instances in India that we were talking about recently, and even in Singapore. So I'm pretty sure that's everywhere. Alistair, how about Scotland? Are you in Glasgow or Edinburgh? Or somewhere else?
Hi, good evening. I'm not in Switzerland. It says Switzerland. I wish I was in Switzerland, but I'm not. I'm in Scotland. So we are BTO solicitors. We are a full-service law firm, which is three offices: Glasgow, Edinburgh, and a small satellite office in the west coast of Scotland. I've done criminal defence for 20 years, been a partner for 14, and I'm also a solicitor advocate, which is the equivalent of a sort of barrister and advocate in other jurisdictions, which means I've got higher rights of audience in the highest court in Scotland. Insofar as the pandemic, basically Scotland's been in various stages of lockdown at different times. We're on our way out of the second lockdown, and essentially insofar as law firms, they classify different workplaces, and essentially the motto was, if you can work from home, you should. And as a result, we have been essentially working from home since March. Leaving potentially sometimes for office meetings or court proceedings, but generally we've all been office based since then, March last year. The COVID impact on the court system has been quite dramatic. We had quite a significant amount of backlog already in the system, and essentially we've seen large periods, certainly at the start, where everything was just put on hold. And then that has led to an acceleration in remote hearings by WebEx, by video, in a way which actually will be of significant benefit to our system going forward, because it would have taken years for some of the things which have come in overnight, in essence. So it's been good. Jury trials have started for the most serious crimes, murder, rape, anything of that ilk in terms of the priority list, and how they are taking place in Scotland is in cinemas, where the jury are in the cinema and everything is being beamed back from the courtroom. It's getting through the business. I understand that conviction rates have increased, no surprise, but I think everyone recognises that it needs to move, and this is a way to facilitate that. Insofar as what Joe mentioned, I was going to say the exact same thing. In terms of furlough fraud, that's going to be a big growth area, I think, as well as other business support, which has been provided by the UK government, which has been quite extraordinarily extensive, as well as, I think, quite light on checks being carried out of the various different corporate entities. And I think that there's already been some media attention on businesses and what things have been used for. I think the scale of it is such that I think there's many companies who are just volunteering and actually paying money back that they've not used to avoid them being under the microscope. And I do think that there will be subsequent enforcement actions, but in terms of priorities, it will be way, way further down the list of everything else that's backlogged. In terms of our jurisdiction, we have quite a or we did have quite a healthy prosecution of frauds, significant frauds, albeit we are, I think it's recognised that the prosecution service are limited in their resources. However, we've just had a big development in that area, which I think is going to be have quite negative effects, which is good for the defence, but quite negative effects in terms of prosecution of frauds in our country, white collar frauds. The Rangers Football Club, basically, there was it went through various takeover. There was various allegations made associated with that, and as a result of that, there was a criminal prosecution that was taken against both the new owner and a number of people who were involved in the investment, as well as a number of the insolvency practitioners based down in London. It has just, following the collapse of the criminal prosecution against some of them, and also the acquittal in relation to the main protagonist, there was then a subsequent civil action raised by many of these individuals against the Lord Advocate who leads prosecutions in Scotland. That has just been conceded by the Lord Advocate in extraordinary terms, because generally the Lord Advocate would have immunity in Scotland, but it was conceded on the basis that it was it's been conceded to suggest it was a malicious prosecution, and as a result, eye-watering amounts of damages have been paid across, and there's still some dispute happening with some more of those at the moment. As a result, there is a massive inquiry happening about how this has happened, as well as those sums coming from the prosecution service, as well as everyone feeling burnt by it, if I could put it that way, insofar as the prosecution service. And in fact, the Lord Advocate at the time of the prosecution, for which is alleged to be a malicious prosecution, is now a senator, one of the highest judges in Scotland. So the ramifications are huge. So I think that is going to put a bit of a pause on any major frauds in terms of how they're going to be proceeded with. And I think that it may well mean that it's perhaps directed, as Joe said, at more low-hanging fruit, smaller companies, easier cases to prove. Anything big and significant at the moment, I think, will be put in the deep freeze. In terms of ideas for topics for the group, I think it's always good for comparative analysis in terms of cases, things that might crop up in terms of, I always find quite interesting some of the cases in searches from the US, search warrants, and what decisions that there have been there in terms of new areas. I think that strategy, the different strategies that both the prosecutions take and the answers and the strategy for the defence. I also think it might be of interest in terms of crypto. I think that that's going to be a growth area as everything is moving digital, financially digital. That's definitely going to be a growth area in the future. I'm sorry I took up so much time there. It was just the Rangers case. I thought it was quite important to mention.
Well, thank you. Very good. Thank you.
I think on the crypto side, as Joe touched on as well, we have Jason Gottlieb from Morrison Cohen in New York, who can't join us because he's in court on the right side of the dock, just to clarify. He specializes on the crypto side, so I think on a future conversation we can definitely bring him into that. And in fact, the crypto group were talking about the latest fad, which is of course NFTs. In their conversation, and we'll see where that goes. I think geographically, it's something like Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Indiana, and then Brianne, you get the last word as the furthest west. But maybe we'll leave our host out of it and go to you next, Tim.
Absolutely. Hi, Tim Delaney at Bose McKinney and Evans in Indianapolis. As Joe mentioned earlier on, my background was actually in the middle. I was originally in private practice, did a lot of white collar defense and fraud litigation work. Then did a tour of duty for about 5 years with our grand jury here in Marion County, which is the investigative arm of the local prosecutor's office, which has jurisdiction essentially over the entire state by virtue of our government headquarters being here, our capital being here. And I've been with Bose now for just over two years in full. My practice is pretty much all white collar crime, although it sort of touches on all areas when our labor and employment business group clients have needs that touch into our realm. In terms of what has been discussed so far as topics, before we get there on the COVID thing, my experience is very much like what I've heard generally, although I have been working from home primarily since the get-go. I do almost everything on the computer anyway. I keep my files there. So it was just a matter of really moving myself and my laptop. Our courts are, for the most part, digital, although in more remote areas, they are holding in-person court with varying levels of restrictions. Almost everybody has some form of restriction in place. But I'd say virtually all of my court appearances have been online since this thing started to really take off last year about this time. In terms of topics, I think we touched on a lot of them. Specifically US based is going to be, I think there is going to be quite a bit of investigations into, especially, I think as Joe pointed out, the current stimulus with the various strings that the government attaches to it, but also the prior stimulus back in 2020, the PPP loans that were issued to all kinds of small businesses across the country came with various restrictions. Specifically, the big one that I think will come up is for forgiveness. You can get your loan forgiven if 60% of the funds were used for payroll purposes. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a prognosticator of any great worth to realize that somebody out there, many people out there, are going to have made a choice between lying to the government or using these funds for purposes that weren't for payroll, keeping the lights on, getting inventory, whatever it was. Also at the front end as well in the application process, because this did come up from some clients, Congress in its infinite wisdom added some restrictions on who could apply for these loans. So if you had a felony conviction, or if you even had a misdemeanor conviction within a certain amount of time, or if it was a pending misdemeanor, I can't remember what, you were ineligible. So I can't imagine how many people had to make a hard choice on whether or not to check the boxes honestly there or not. So we're going to have a lot of that here locally in Indiana. Like many of the districts for prosecution, we're having, as always, the standard fare of guns and drugs, guns and drugs, guns and drugs all the time. But we are seeing, I think, a fair amount, at least locally, of public corruption investigations, some very large ones involving, in many instances, hundreds of millions of dollars or big money contracting deals with municipalities. So I think those will continue. And as was canvassed earlier in the conversation, the tail on those is very long. And so when I'll typically get involved in an investigation, and my partners will start to ask me like, "Oh, I guess it's going nowhere," because it's been taking so damn long. Well, I often tell them, the government has time on its side, has all the power and all the money, and so these things take their time. And I think with the PPP and the other stimulus and the other economic impacts that are going to flow from COVID, whether it be the furlough fraud or what have you, I think the amount of lead up time is going to be enormous. And as cynical as it sounds, I think in the end will be good for the people assembled on this call.
Any ideas for topics for our group?
I think we've said quite a few, and so I hate to be the person that says they've all been spoken for, but everything that was on my checklist is for the most part been spoken for. I think that from my selfish perspective here, getting more of the international flavor will be of value to me personally, and I think people that are similarly situated to me and other Mackrell firms is hearing. I spoke specifically to the PPP program here, but what similar programs are going to be targeted in other countries, as well as what the international implications are across the board.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I guess before we loop back to our hosts, it's over to you in Calgary, Brianne.
Hi, so I'm based out of Calgary, Canada, and I came over to Scott Ventura Rudicoff about 4 years ago from Norton Rose Fulbright, just like Kirthi did. And I came over with Gene Bodner, who was a partner at Norton Rose for 25 years. And he was the co-chair of the Business Ethics and Anti-Corruption Group and the Fraud and Asset Recovery Group. And so he has much more experience than I do on the international aspect and the foreign aspect of this. Most of my experience is local based, dealing with a lot of fraud and asset recovery, employee theft, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's an insurance aspect from my end too. We do a lot of insurance defense and subrogation work at our firm. There's two other partners in our firm that are also have some experience in white collar crime, Laura Bracco-Callahan, and she does employment law. So that's obviously helpful when you're dealing with employee theft situations. And Dominic Venturo, who's a senior partner at the firm. So as far as topics for a webinar go, I mean, everything that's been addressed sounds very interesting. I would have to talk to Gene to see if he has any other ideas on, you know, an international scale, because I'm, again, locally based, basically. And as far as COVID goes, yeah, we've been locked down multiple times over the last year, and I've basically been working from home since last March. I've gone into the office a few times, but I'm, you know, all my files are online now. And yeah, it's just been a matter of putting me in my home office. I put up wallpaper, have a desk now, like trying to make it feel a little like home. And so, yeah, our restaurants are starting to open back up. Like you're allowed to go with one household, a member of the same household, sorry. And I've taken up some outdoor sports like skiing since we can't do much inside.
Thank you very much. You know, that's as far west as we can go today, I think, Brianne. So thanks for your comments. I look forward to talking more with you in the future. Keith, anything further for a go to the order today? I maybe some closing thoughts.
I think some closing thoughts from you and Lourdes.
Okay, Lourdes.
Joe, Doug just popped. We can see Doug's face now.
Okay.
And he's from Philly. He's in Petrogallo, but he's also in Philly. Say a few words.
Let's Doug join us, please, and thank you, Brianne, again. That was I want to move to Calgary someday, so I'll be in touch.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see everyone, and I appreciate being welcomed into this group. Lourdes is my partner, and she notified me of this meeting, and I'm happy to join. Just by way of brief background, I'm co-chair of our white collar group at the Petrogallo firm. I served as a prosecutor, both locally and federal prosecutor in Philadelphia before joining the firm almost 13 years ago. I am interested in the thoughts of this group on any number of topics. I do some international investigations. I do some Foreign Corrupt Practices Act work as well, and I find that to be interesting, and I think this group could be a great resource for questions on those topics. Something that I would be interested in for presentations is the way in which cooperation works with different governments across the globe. I know how it works here, and I know we have things that we refer to as proffer letters, and we have different types of meetings with the prosecutors, but I would be very interested to see and learn how individuals cooperate with the government across the globe. So as far as pandemic goes, we have been remote. I have not seen the inside of my office in a year. I'm going tomorrow for the first time because I have a client meeting that requires it. but we have been very efficient remote and do everything electronically. I have been on some Zoom hearings and telephonic settlement conferences and things like that. I actually represented one client in front of a grand jury that was accomplished remotely, that was a little bit unorthodox, but we got through it. And I am pleasantly surprised with how things are moving along. Jury trials, by and large, have not resumed in our region. In Philadelphia, the Court of Common Pleas Civil Division, our local civil trials have just begun with juries about 3 weeks ago, I want to say now. And apparently it's going well, but we have such volume in that particular court that I think it's going to take a while to get back up and running. Our federal court has been doing a lot with criminal sentencings and hearings and the like to try to maintain order and make sure that everyone's rights are protected. But jury trials are going to take a while to get back up and running. I thank everyone, and I appreciate you giving me the time for a few comments. I look forward to seeing you on future meetings.
Did we lose Joe?
We did. Yeah, we did lose. You're in charge.
Wonderful. No, one of the things, Doug, and I did put a comment. There he is. There's Joe. One of the things that I did write to Joe during this thing is MLATs, the mutual agreements, treaties, mutual legal agreements. And we just had a situation where we actually got a Mackrell, our sister firm in Madrid, Mackrell sister firm in Madrid, to help us with a client whom the government, the federal government here, wants to bring in as a witness at this point. And they wanted to get on a plane and go to Madrid, and because of COVID, they couldn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. But it was very helpful to learn how what Spain did in terms of the client wanted the Madrid, because he's based in Madrid attorneys, to tell him what the laws in Spain was. So in case they got him and all of that. And they were very, very useful and very helpful. So I think it is important to, that's one of the topics, Joe, that I think it is important, is the and so we can tell our clients, if you flee and go to another jurisdiction, this is what can happen to you, and things like that. So I think that's another topic. So
right, Doug was talking about that when I got obliterated. I'm not sure what happened, but it was a good. How does cooperation work around the world? And the MLAT piece is something that we should really. One thought I've had too, and maybe a friend from DOJ or someone who's actually in the Office of International Affairs, maybe coming and presenting, and maybe similarly we could impose on our colleagues in London, maybe to have someone from the SFO, just come spend a little bit of time with us. But I think extradition is a very important topic, and I've got since I've been affiliated with Mackrell, it seems like I've had a bonus crop of things coming up that are worldwide implicated. So I do think what you're saying is, if we can't get into a country or travel to it, this is the next best thing we can be doing, Lourdes. So I'm all over that, and I look forward to sharing war stories with you and Doug at some point about your experiences here in the U.S. With the federal government. I think, so capping it off, and say a few comments here after Lourdes had her final shot at things. I will benefit greatly from having the experience that Lourdes has had with this group, so we can improve upon a great success story that she had when she was leading the charge. And I plan on doing that with a bit of a committee, a smaller group like Lourdes, hopefully Tim and Jason here in the U.S., to sort of help guide the ship. But the rest of you around the world, we want to encourage you to please stay with us. I guess we don't want it to be purely a Western Hemisphere phenomenon. So if there's a way to, get our colleagues, Keith, find the right, I think, Lourdes, you and I were talking about, well, what is the right time, here in the Eastern US to help sort of make us accommodate our other places. So we want to, even if we should have to have a separate get together, Keith, for our Eastern Hemisphere friends, that might be something to think about. I think I've taken some notes that are probably pretty unintelligible.
Okay, he's frozen.
I plan on a game plan for the next program, but I think we've got some great ideas. I think my internet connection is a bit unstable. So Keith, I'm going to turn it back to you for closing words, and then I'll adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, Joe, and thank you all. I think I'm spending a lot of my time with the various practice groups, and what I'm seeing, unsurprisingly, is the more you're all busy, but fundamentally, the more communication there is. Some of it is down to the leaders, and you're in great hands with Joe and Lourdes and the smaller wider committee of Tim and Jason as well. But the more interaction that there is between you, the more that you can make the time to spare this hour, once every couple of months, to interchange ideas, and we can do things like put on a webinar, create some white papers, have some discussions where interviewing one another. It doesn't necessarily have to be a webinar. What the blockchain and crypto group did is they found that Andy Updegrove up in Gesmaret Updegrove in Boston he's written novels incorporating his experience of and his understanding of blockchain, and therefore actually it was one of your guys, Tim in Bose, Justin Swanson, one of your colleagues, sort of interviewed Andy and used that as a sort of interchange of ideas between two attorneys who knew what they're talking about within the subject to basically tease out some really interesting insight that we could then repurpose and could be sent to clients, other lawyers, up and coming next generation lawyers, etc. So there's a whole host of ideas that we can develop on. And what's been great actually in the way you've hosted this, Joe, is to get everybody chipping in about their experiences. So it's great not to have any shy people on this call. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you on future calls. Anything you need, any support you need from Mackrell International, please drop myself, drop Pam, drop Meryl a line. If you want to connect, all of the email addresses are in the practice group page. If you can't find that or you're too busy to find it, you know where to find me. And I look forward to seeing you all on future calls. And for those of you who are out and about, enjoy. For the rest of us, stay safe. We'll get there.